My criterion for this list that I have, I've said it before, but I'm a huge fantasy drafter and I love doing fantasy drafts with people like Juggle Guy and Crimson Blur when it comes down to a big tournament. But my criterion is a little bit of an unorthodox one because some people will evaluate peak skill and say, well, I think if Mango plays in the right conditions, then Mango should be the best, even if he's less consistent than other players. Some people, that's why some people value a lot of other people over Plouffe, especially in 2014 when Plouffe got ninth in like four different nationals, and I think he got like 13th that one. But overall, very impressive. People slept on him because those ninth places don't look nice compared to a player that gets like fifth at one and 25th at another. So my criterion is this: if I'm picking a fantasy draft and I'm going in order, basically like if everybody's available, I'm going to pick this player number one. If he's not there, then I'm definitely picking this player number two. I'm going to go for the players that will, on average, get me the most points. So if you run a bracket 100 times and everybody's there, which players are going to be the most, are going to get me the most points consistently? And the more the higher place and the more points you get. But then there are certain cases of players that get 7th at one tournament and then get 49th at another tournament. And so in my head, like getting that 49th place actually hurts me a lot, and it virtually makes me lose in a fantasy draft. If I draft somebody that I expect to get in the top 8 or top 12 or ninth place, and they get 49th or 65th, and they bomb the tournament, then I can't win the fantasy draft because that's too much of a deficit for me to handle. So consistency matters in my book. I'd rather take a person that gets 13th place twice as opposed to a guy that gets like 7th and 25th. So without further ado, my list starts off with number 15. And number 15, I like Silent Wolf. And the reason why is he's a very reliable pick. Always good for 13th or better. And he's a guy that, can compete with the top Foxes. Beat Leffen in Dittos. Took Hacks to the brink at D Fox with it. And he beat PPU. And he has taken sets off of NorCal at a recent Washington tournament. Granted, he's had some fluky performances in NorCal before, but he is a stable pick and he always seems to do well. And so I have him at number 15. Number 14, I have Shroomed, and Shroomed is a guy that usually always performs at nationals. He's a guy that has nerves of steel. Doesn't really choke or get nervous, and he always finds a way to win. He did beat Plouffe recently. He matches up pretty well against players like Westballz, PPU, Plouffe, and so he does have what it takes to beat that second tier level of players. Doesn't really do too well against the Big Six. Lost a heartbreaking set to Hungrybox. But overall, doesn't really seem to have the tools to beat the Big Six or have a high potential. But his consistency is up there, and that's why I like him. Number 13 is actually me slightly overrating this player in my opinion. But given the format of nationals and how people seem to choke all the time, and given that's best of threes, I'm putting Amsa there at number 13. If I were drafting for Evo, I think this is a very smart pick. Mainly because of the Yoshi unfamiliarity with everybody and the fact that he is a guy that doesn't really get nervous. He's a guy that punishes very hard, and he will make his opponents very nervous when they can't figure out what to do against him. Because against Yoshi, you have to take risks and you have to mix up your timings to get past the parry. And if for whatever reason he reads the timing correctly and he parries you, you could die. And so I really predict him to do well at Nationals. Number 12, this is a little bit of a controversial one. So I view external circumstances in John's injuries in sports, especially when you're fantasy drafting. It's something you have to consider, and this is why Hacks is at number 12. At Apex, he forfeited because he had insomnia issues, and this is something that's been ongoing for Hacks, and it's been a struggle for him to play at his best. It seems like his hands have recovered pretty well, and given if he didn't have these external issues come up, I would put him probably honestly a little bit higher, but it's really difficult to bet on a player that could just randomly forfeit or like not play to his max potential and then just lose. So Hacks at number 12. Number 11, I'd put Plouffe, and Plouffe could go higher, and I could see why the hype train is there. It's a new Sheik that has really good move choices, can tech chase really well, can be a nightmare for both Fox and Falcons to deal with. I think Plouffe has easily the cleanest movement out of any Sheik I've seen outside of maybe Flash. He reminds me of an old school AMSA or an earlier KK. And so I'm very impressed with what I've seen. I don't think he's as invincible as people make him out to be. Struggled with Wizrobe today, lost 6-0 to Muti King. Split sets with Westballz and Shroomed. And so I don't think that he deserves to go much higher given the uncertainty I have with a lot of matchups I haven't seen from him. I'm worried that his Sheik can get gimmicked in an uncommon matchup. And so number 11 now, I wouldn't really blame you if you drafted him higher. Number 10, I put Pew Pew, and the reason why is this guy is a consistency monster. A lot of ninth places, and so I don't know of a time he's plays worse than like outside of the top 16 at a national. It's been a really long time. His Marth is really smart, consistent, really strong punish game, can be a threat to top level spacies on an off day, and so I have to give PP number 10, just given his history of just really good nationals. Number 9, this is kind of more of a wildcard pick, and I may be regretting it later. Given just like Lucky's performances in the past few months, I think he deserves this higher spot, although he does have a tendency to choke. Lucky does have the potential to beat people like Leffen and Hungrybox, and so Lucky has taken two sets against Hungrybox. He's beaten Hacks at Super Nebulous, dominates S2J lately, and then Lucky also beat PPU the last time, and I believe he and Shroom have a lot of close sets. So a lot of good stuff I've seen from Lucky lately that make me want him to put him in the slot. Granted, you could probably put him a little lower, and a lot of people may disagree with me, and I may have that SoCal bias, but I've seen a lot of great things in the past 3 months with Lucky. Number 8, I put Westballz. Westballz has that issue of never performing well at Apex or Evo, but his scope of work and what he's done in the past 4 to 5 months has been very impressive. Seems to have a pretty good hold on the second tier level of players. He goes back and forth with Axe, has taken a lot of sets off the big six, and I believe he also has the potential to beat Muti King if they played. And so putting 8 at Westballz, hopefully he doesn't disappoint me if I do get that 8th pick and I pick him and he loses to like Swift Base or Kage or I don't know, someone random that he shouldn't be losing to. Number 7, I put Axe. Axe is very impressive. In recent months, I've been quoted to say that I believe Axe should be ahead of Muti King at number 6, but Muti King has shown to be pretty rock solid lately, so I'm giving Axe the number 7 slot. Always a monster, always a threat to beat any spacey player. He has like a decent shot to beat Muti King, although I think Muti King is the favorite in that matchup. Axe is just really good. Number 6, I put Muti King, although you can argue him anywhere from like 5 to 7. Muti King, is that one guy that everyone below him is going to have to learn to beat. Best of 3s do hurt him, though. He doesn't get final D. But overall, just, rock solid fundamentals. And it's like until you're like at a certain level, it's actually really hard to beat him. But the second tier Foxes, have been giving him a lot of trouble lately. So it's a big question mark, but have to do it. Number 5, I put Leffen. Leffen is an interesting person because, he's pretty much been getting bodied by Armada, Mango, and Hungrybox as of recently. But he dominated Mutaking the last 2 times, and so that shows some promise. But weaknesses to Samus and losing to players like SBAT do give me some question marks about him. But he also, it's kind of hard because, he does, solidly beat a lot of people in the second tier as well. So temporary slot at 5. Honestly, I think 5th is the worst spot to pick in the fantasy draft because there's so much uncertainty. Whereas if you're in the top 3 or top 4 of a fantasy draft, you're pretty much guaranteed what you get in that position. Whereas at number 5, you're kind of gambling, and your 5th pick, whether it's a Leffen, Mutaking, or Axe, could fall apart. They could just randomly just lose to somebody. Number 4, Hungrybox. I don't see this as a question mark. I think this is the easiest player to place in terms of results. Hungrybox had very convincing wins over Leffen and Mutaking. Went to Game 5 with Armada. Hasn't played PPMD in a while, but Hungrybox has always been scared for PP, where PP would, always take a lead and Hungrybox would just win. And so he's always going to be a threat to people around him. The only caveat is that, those second tier Fox players like Lucky, Hacks, Leffen, Kobol, are going to be, threats to Hungrybox. But Hungrybox is also the person, outside the big 3 that can pose the most threat to a big 3 player, in my opinion. Number 3, I have to go with PPMD. And just mainly because he hasn't played much, and one tournament is just such an awful sample size for the past 5 to 6 months, where Mangos has gone on plenty of results, and so is Armada. So PPMD is number 3 in my book. Could win a tournament. He is a contender, a very strong contender. Number 2, Mango. He's lost to Axe and Westballz lately, but Evo Mango is just so scary, and when he's in that zone and he's in that mindset, you just have to just respect it. And like he's at the absolute peak. I believe he's the strongest player out of anyone I've seen. Armada is number 1. It shouldn't come as a huge surprise. This guy is a consistency monster. Rarely places outside of the top 3. If it's anywhere worse than the top 3, it's pretty fluky. This guy has never lost a set when he's sober against anyone outside of the top 6 since Pound 4. Has dominated Leffen. Is pretty overall strong against Hungrybox. Beats Mutaking pretty convincingly. Close sets with PPMD, and he's had a firm hold on Mango as of late, winning the last 4 or 5. So it should come as a no-brainer that Armada should be number 1 at this point. Just the guy is just so consistent. It's just crazy. I don't see how you can really argue anyone else. You can make cases, but in my head and what I've seen in terms of results and how he's fixed a lot of his holes lately, I can't really put him worse than number 1. And that's my top 15 list.